As the twilight of life embraced Oliver, his 2 children, Derek and Elise, gathered around his hospital bed. The room was heavy with the scent of antiseptics and the silent weight of the inevitable. When Oliver's breath became shallow, he beckoned Derek closer, whispering something into his ear. The next day, it was announced that Derek had inherited a staggering $500 million from their father's estate. Elise, feeling a pang of shock and envy, wondered if the same fortune awaited her. Before we dive into the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, share with your friends, and let's get started. Elise stood in the shadow of her father's hospital room, the beeping of machines a stark reminder of the life slipping away. The air was thick with the scent of antiseptic and the unspoken words of goodbye. Her brother, Derek, was nowhere to be seen, likely already celebrating his newfound wealth. Elise clutched an old, battered phone, her father's last gift. Her gaze was fixed on her father, Oliver, whose breaths were becoming fewer, each one a precious echo of the man who had been her rock and guide. The door creaked open, revealing Derek, her half-brother, who had inherited a fortune now untouchable to her. His eyes didn't linger on their father. Instead, they scanned the room as if searching for something more valuable than the life ebbing away before them. "I'll leave you 2 alone," Derek said, his voice devoid of sorrow. He patted his jacket pocket, where the weight of his newfound wealth seemed to reside, and left without another word. Elise's fingers brushed against the pocket of her jacket, feeling the cold metal of the old, scratched phone. It was an odd bequest, one that puzzled her, but as her fingers wrapped around it, she felt a connection to her dad, a silent promise between them. Oliver's hand twitched, and Elise moved closer, her voice a whisper. "I'm here." His eyes fluttered open, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "Remember," he managed, his voice a mere thread. "The phone. It's more than it seems." His gaze was intense, urging her to understand, to look beyond the surface. Then, with one last breath, he was gone, leaving her with more questions than answers. The funeral was a blur, Derek's absence notable. His excuse of business matters rang hollow in Elise's ears. She was left to mourn alone, her mother, Helen, too consumed by grief to notice the peculiar inheritance Derek had claimed or the odd one Elise had received. Back at home in the heart of New York City, Elise sat alone in her room. The old phone rested on her desk like an unopened book full of secrets. The password prompt stared back at her, a digital lock to her father's last enigma. The room was quiet, the city's hum a distant melody compared to the cacophony of her thoughts. She tried every conceivable password she could think of, dates of significant family events, initials, even phrases her father used to say. Each attempt ended in failure, the screen flashing red with denial. Frustration was building, but so was her resolve. She remembered her father's last words, "The phone, it's more than it seems." Elise examined the phone closely, her eyes catching a tiny, almost imperceptible switch near the charging port. With a cautious hand, she flicked it. The screen changed, revealing a hidden app. Its icon, a vintage key, suggested entry to something locked away from the world. As she opened the app, her heart raced. It was like stepping into a digital archive of her father's life, each file named after a year, encrypted and waiting. She accessed the file from her birth year, her finger trembling as she tapped it. A video began to play. There was her father, younger, vibrant, his eyes alight with life but shadowed by secrets. "Elise, if you're watching this, it means I'm no longer with you. But know this, I've left you something invaluable. Not just this phone, but the truth it holds. You'll find answers, but you must be careful. Trust no one until you understand everything." The video ended abruptly, leaving her with more questions than answers. Before she could delve deeper, a knock at her door snapped her back to reality. "Elise, we need to talk," her stepdad, Thomas, called out, his tone leaving no room for refusal. She knew this wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation. Opening the door, she found Thomas standing there, his face set in a hard line. "What about?" she asked, her guard up. "About your inheritance," Thomas said, stepping into her room uninvited. He sat down, his posture that of someone about to issue an order. Derek got the big share, as you know. But your part. We think it should go to Alex. Elise's heart sank. Alex, Thomas's son, was someone she barely knew, and now they wanted her father's legacy for him. You want me to give my dad's last gift to Alex? Her voice was a mix of disbelief and defiance. For his education, Thomas insisted. It's what family does. Alex has potential. He could do great things if he's not bogged down by financial worries. This wasn't just money, Elise retorted, gripping the phone tighter. It's mine. You're being selfish, Thomas accused, his voice hardening. Think about what's best for everyone. Best for who? Alex, who never even bothered to visit Dad in the hospital. You, who sees dollar signs instead of family. Elise's words cut through the air, sharp and unyielding. Thomas leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Watch your tone, Elise. This isn't just about Alex. It's about what's fair. You live here, under my roof, with your mother and me. The implication was clear: compliance or conflict. Elise stood, feeling the room shrink around her. Fairness? My father wanted me to have this, not for you or Alex to decide its fate. Their heated exchange was interrupted by Alex, who appeared at the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. What's going on? He asked, his voice groggy. Your sister, Thomas said, turning to Alex with feigned patience, is being stubborn about helping you out. Alex frowned, trying to catch up. Oh, the money for college. Elise seized the moment. Yes, Alex, for college. But wasn't it supposed to be for some business venture just yesterday? Her words were a trap, baited with the inconsistency of their stories. Thomas's face twitched with irritation. It's for his future, Elise. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Elise's mind raced, connecting the dots. Her father's warning about the phone, Thomas's sudden interest in her inheritance, their inconsistent excuses. She stepped toward the door, her resolve hardening. We'll see about that, she declared, leaving the room with a sense of purpose. The city outside was a stark contrast to the stifling atmosphere Elise had left behind. The streets buzzed with life, a reminder that the world moved on even in the midst of personal turmoil. Elise walked, her mind piecing together the puzzle her father had left her. The night was thick with the kind of silence that precedes a storm. In her small New York apartment, Elise felt the weight of every second as she waited for Marcus. She had called him, her voice a mix of urgency and desperation. Marcus, once her father's closest colleague, had always been like family, sharing in the unspoken bond of loyalty to Oliver. Earlier, before Marcus pulled up outside her building, there had been a phone call, the kind that pierces through the mundane to touch the core of one's life. Elise's fingers trembled as she dialed Marcus's number. It was late, and she knew he might not answer, but the urgency in her heart couldn't wait for morning. The phone rang twice before Marcus's voice crackled through, groggy with sleep. Elise, it's, what, 2 a.m. His voice was a blend of concern and confusion. I'm sorry, Marcus, but I need your help. It's about Dad, she said, her voice steady but carrying the weight of her recent discovery. There was a pause, the sound of Marcus waking up, literally and figuratively, to the gravity of her words. What about Oliver? He left me something. His old phone. It's more than just a phone, Marcus. It's encrypted, and he said, it's more than it seems. I think he was involved in something big. Something called Project Eclipse. Marcus's tone shifted, alert now, the sleepiness gone from his voice. Project Eclipse? Elise, that's dangerous territory. Where are you? I'm at my apartment. Can you come? I'll be there as soon as I can. Don't touch that phone again until I arrive. We need to be careful. The call ended, leaving Elise with the quiet hum of her apartment, the city outside oblivious to the secrets she was about to unveil. When the knock finally came, it was gentle, almost hesitant, as if not to disturb the city's slumber. Elise opened the door to find Marcus. His face was lined with concern, but his eyes alight with curiosity. He was in his early 40s, his hair peppered with grey, a testament to years spent in front of computer screens unraveling digital mysteries. "Elise, what's going on?" Marcus asked as he stepped inside, his gaze immediately drawn to the old phone on the desk. "It's Dad," she said, leading him to the desk. "He left me this." She handed him the phone, her hands shaking slightly. Marcus examined the device, noting its age and the unusual app icon. "Oliver always had a flair for the dramatic," he murmured, a faint smile touching his lips, though it was tinged with sadness. "So, what's the catch?" "It's encrypted," Elise explained. He said, "It's more than it seems." Classic Dad. Marcus nodded, sitting down and pulling out his laptop. "Let's see what secrets your dad left for you." They worked in silence for a while, Marcus typing commands into his laptop and connecting it to the phone. The room was filled only with the sound of keys clicking and the occasional sigh from Marcus as he encountered yet another layer of security. "Here we go," he finally said, his voice low with excitement. The screen of his laptop displayed a series of files, each one named by a year. "These are heavily encrypted, but I think I can crack them." As they waited for the decryption to work its magic, Elise recounted the confrontation with Thomas and Alex, the pressure to hand over the phone. Marcus listened, his face growing more serious with each word. "This isn't just about inheritance, is it?" Marcus asked, his eyes meeting hers. "There's something bigger here," Elise replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dad mentioned Project Eclipse in his message." Marcus's eyes widened. "Project Eclipse? I've heard whispers of that." It was supposed to be a covert operation, something about surveillance beyond legal boundaries. Oliver was always against it, said it was too dangerous. The decryption software beeped, signaling it had broken through. Marcus opened the first file, revealing a document detailing financial transactions linked to Project Eclipse. It was clear Oliver had been tracking money, uncovering a trail that connected high-profile individuals to what seemed like illegal activities. "There's more," Marcus said, scrolling through the files. They found emails, hidden transactions, and a list of names, politicians, business tycoons, and even a few law enforcement officials. Elise's heart raced. This is why Thomas wanted the phone. They're not just after the money. "No, they're after this," Marcus agreed, tapping the screen. "This could bring down some very powerful people. Your dad was protecting you with this." The reality of their situation settled over them like a heavy fog. They were dealing with something far beyond family inheritance disputes. This was about corruption, power, and now their safety. "We need to be careful," Marcus said, his tone now grave. "If these people know you have this, they won't just ask. They'll take it, by any means necessary." Elise felt the gravity of the situation, the weight of her father's trust in her. "What do we do?" "First, we make copies. We don't keep all our eggs in one basket," Marcus advised. "Then we need to understand everything here. We need to go off-grid, find a place where we can work without being watched." As they worked, Marcus's fingers flew over the keyboard, setting up encryption for their files and creating backups in multiple locations, including cloud storage that required multiple keys to access. Elise watched, learning, her respect for Marcus growing with each command he executed. "We should also set up some form of communication that can't be traced," Marcus continued, pulling out a burner phone he had brought with him. "We'll use this for now, but we'll need to keep moving, changing locations until we figure out our next step." Elise nodded, the enormity of the task before them dawning on her. "How do we even begin to dismantle something like Project Eclipse?" "Step by step," Marcus replied, his voice calm but resolute. "First, we need to understand the full scope of it. Then we find allies, people who can help us expose this without getting us killed. Journalists, maybe even some insiders who've had a change of heart." The night was turning into early morning as they prepared. Marcus was setting up secure communication channels while Elise packed essentials, her mind racing through scenarios. She was stepping into her father's shoes, unknowingly becoming part of something much larger than herself. As dawn light began to seep through the curtains, Marcus looked up from his work. "Elise, This is big. We're not just uncovering secrets. We're stepping into a war." Elise nodded, feeling her resolve solidify within her. "Then we fight it. For Dad." With that, they left her apartment, the city waking up around them, unaware of the storm brewing in the digital shadows. In the legacy left by Oliver for his daughter, they headed to a safe house Marcus knew, one place where they could delve deeper into the secrets of Project Eclipse without the prying eyes of those who would wish them harm. The journey to the safe house was tense. Marcus took circuitous routes, ensuring they weren't followed, while Elise kept her eyes on the mirrors, looking for anything out of the ordinary. They spoke little, the weight of their mission hanging between them. Upon arriving, the safe house was nothing like what Elise had expected. It was an old, nondescript building in a quiet part of the city, with windows covered for privacy. Marcus had prepared it for such scenarios, with backup power, internet that didn't require traditional service providers, and several locked rooms filled with tech equipment. "We'll be safe here for a while," Marcus assured her, setting up his gear. "But remember, safety is temporary. We need to keep moving, keep learning." Elise watched as Marcus began to delve deeper into the files, his face illuminated by the glow of the screens. She felt a mix of fear and determination, knowing that they were now on a path from which there was no turning back. Each file opened was like turning a page in a book of secrets, each one revealing more about her father's life and the dangerous world he had navigated. "We'll need to reach out to some old contacts of your dad's," Marcus said, breaking the silence. "People who knew what he was into, who might still be loyal, or at least willing to help for the right reasons. And we'll need to be careful with whom we trust," Elise added, her voice steady. "Dad said to trust no one until we understand everything." Marcus looked at her, a proud smile forming. "You're learning fast, just like your father." As the day began to brighten outside, they worked in silence, occasionally broken by the hum of computers and the soft click of a mouse. They were on the cusp of something monumental, a revelation that could change everything or end them. The safe house was eerily quiet, except for the low hum of Marcus's laptop and the occasional rustle as Elise paced, her mind racing. Morning light seeped through the cracks in the covered windows, casting thin beams across the room. Marcus leaned over his computer, muttering to himself as he decrypted another file. "Almost there," he said, his voice a mix of exhaustion and excitement. "If this works, we'll get deeper into Project Eclipse's financial trail." Elise stood by the window, peeking through the blinds. "Marcus, I can't shake this feeling. What if they found us?" Marcus glanced up, his brow furrowing. "We were careful. Trust me, no one's." A loud crash shattered the morning stillness. The door burst open with a force that sent papers and equipment flying. Derek stood there, his face twisted with anger, his suit disheveled but still a stark contrast to the chaos around him. In his hand was a pistol, its cold steel gleaming ominously in the light. "Elise," Derek growled, his eyes darting between her and Marcus. "You've got some explaining to do." Marcus shot up from his chair, raising his hands cautiously. "Derek, calm down. Let's talk about this." Derek's lips curled into a bitter smirk. "You, of all people, Marcus Foster. I should have known you'd slither your way back into this." Elise's eyes widened. "You know him?" Derek's glare didn't waver. "Oh, I know him. Dad's so-called trusted colleague. The guy who disappeared the moment things got dangerous." "What are you doing here, Marcus?" Derek continued. "Helping my sister run away with evidence that could destroy us all." "Destroy you, maybe," Marcus shot back, his voice steady despite the weapon aimed at him. "But I'm here to protect Oliver's legacy, and Elise." Derek took a step closer, the gun now aimed directly at Marcus. "Protect? You mean exploit, don't you? Just like you did with Dad." "I know what you're after, Marcus. You think I don't remember Project Eclipse?" The room fell into an uneasy silence. Elise's heart pounded in her chest as she stood between the two men, her mind scrambling to make sense of the accusations flying back and forth. "Derek," Elise said carefully, "what are you talking about? What do you know about Project Eclipse?" Derek's eyes flicked to her, his expression softening slightly. "Elise, you don't know what you're getting into. That phone, it's not just some treasure trove of Dad's secrets. It's a death sentence. There are people, powerful people, who won't think twice about erasing us if they think we know too much. And yet here you are," Marcus interjected, his tone laced with sarcasm, storming in like a hero in a bad action movie. "If you're so concerned, why not let us handle it?" "Because I'm trying to stop her from making the same mistake Dad did," Derek barked. "You think Oliver was some noble crusader, but he got in too deep, trusted the wrong people, and look where it got him." Elise's chest tightened at his words. "What do you mean, wrong people?" Dad said. "He didn't tell you the whole story," Derek cut her off. "And I bet Marcus didn't either." Marcus opened his mouth to protest, but Derek raised the gun slightly, silencing him. "Dad didn't just stumble onto Project Eclipse," Derek continued. "He built it." The revelation hit Elise like a freight train. "That's not true," she whispered. "He was trying to stop it," Derek interrupted, his voice hard. "Eventually. But only after he realized what he'd created. He thought he could fix it, expose it, but it was too late. And Marcus here, he was part of it too." Elise turned to Marcus, her voice trembling. "Is that true?" Marcus hesitated, his face pale. Yes. But it's not what you think. I worked with Oliver, but I didn't know the full extent of Project Eclipse until it was too late. When I found out, I tried to help him shut it down. Shut it down? Derek scoffed. "You mean you tried to cover your tracks?" Elise's head spun, the weight of the secrets crashing down on her. "Why didn't Dad tell me this?" "Because he wanted to protect you," Derek said, his voice softening again. "He knew what kind of danger this would bring. And now you're diving headfirst into it, dragging Marcus along for the ride." A sharp noise from outside, the crunch of gravel underfoot, snapped everyone's attention. Marcus moved to the window, peering through the blinds. "Derek, did you bring anyone with you?" Marcus asked, his voice low and urgent. Derek frowned. "Why?" "Because someone's out there." Elise's blood ran cold. "We have to go. Now." The tension in the room snapped like a rubber band. Marcus grabbed his laptop and the phone, shoving them into a bag. Derek hesitated, his grip on the gun tightening as he glanced toward the door. "You want to live, Derek?" Marcus snapped. "Then help us, or stay here and find out what happens when they catch you." Derek cursed under his breath, shoving the gun into his waistband. "Fine. But this isn't over." The trio slipped out the back door, moving quickly through the alleyways as the sound of footsteps grew louder behind them. Elise's mind raced as they ran, questions swirling in her head. Who was after them? And how much of what Derek said could she trust? The warehouse was silent except for the faint clicking of Marcus's keyboard as he worked tirelessly on decrypting another layer of files. Elise paced the room, her mind racing through the tangled web of lies, secrets, and betrayal her father's death had unveiled. Derek sat in the corner, his arms crossed, his presence a heavy weight in the already oppressive air. Marcus looked up from his laptop, breaking the silence. "This next layer could take hours to decrypt, but I've already seen enough to confirm one thing. Your father wasn't just running from Project Eclipse, he was running from the people behind it. People like Langston?" Elise asked. Marcus nodded. "Langston? Yes. But it's bigger than him. This isn't just one man or a small group. It's a network, and it reaches further than we thought." Derek let out a bitter laugh, drawing their attention. "You think you're uncovering some grand conspiracy? Let me save you the trouble. You're already in over your head. This isn't some crusade you can win, Elise." Elise turned to him, her patience wearing thin. "Why are you even here, Derek? You got your inheritance. You walked away without a second thought. What do you care about this now?" Derek leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "Because you're dragging my name into this mess. Do you think those people don't know who I am? Who I'm related to? They think I'm part of whatever game you're playing, and now my life is on the line too. You didn't seem too concerned about family when you took the money and left, Elise snapped. Maybe if you'd stayed, Dad wouldn't have had to protect me alone. Derek's face darkened. You don't get it, do you? That money wasn't just an inheritance. It was hush money. Elise froze. What? They paid me off, Derek said, his voice low but seething. Dad made enemies when he tried to dismantle Project Eclipse. He told me to take the money and leave, to stay out of it. That's why I didn't fight for the phone. He told me it was a death sentence. And yet here you are, Marcus interjected, his tone dripping with sarcasm. What happened? Run out of cash already? Derek ignored him, turning his gaze back to Elise. You should have done the same. But no, you had to dig into it, didn't you? Do you have any idea what you've unleashed? Before Elise could respond, a sharp knock on the door cut through the tension. The three of them froze, their eyes darting toward the entrance. Did you tell anyone we were here? Marcus whispered, his hand instinctively reaching for his bag. No, Elise said, her voice barely audible. Derek stood, his body tense. Stay here. I'll handle it. Elise grabbed his arm as he moved toward the door. What are you doing? You can't trust whoever that is. Derek pulled free, giving her a look that was equal parts frustration and pity. You still don't get it, do you? I've been trying to protect you, but you're too stubborn to see it. He opened the door slightly, revealing Thomas standing on the other side, his face a mask of cold determination. Elise's stomach dropped. Thomas, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Thomas stepped inside, his gaze sweeping the room before settling on Elise. You've made this a lot harder than it needed to be. What are you doing here? Marcus demanded, standing protectively between Elise and Thomas. Thomas ignored him, his eyes locked on Elise. I told you to hand over the phone, Elise. You could have avoided all of this. But now you force my hand. Elise felt a chill run down her spine. Forced your hand? What are you talking about? Thomas glanced at Derek, who looked away, his jaw tight. You didn't think Derek came here on his own, did you? He's been helping me track you. You're a loose end, Elise, and if you won't hand over the phone willingly, we'll take it. Elise's breath caught as the pieces clicked into place. Derek's sudden appearance, his insistence on joining them, it had all been a setup. Her half-brother hadn't come to help her, he'd come to betray her. You're working with them, Elise whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. Derek didn't meet her eyes. It's not what you think. They gave me no choice. There's always a choice, Marcus said, his voice sharp. And you made the wrong one. Thomas stepped closer, his expression calm but menacing. Enough of this. Hand over the phone, Elise, and we'll make sure you're left alone. Keep fighting, and I can't promise what'll happen next. Elise's grip tightened on the bag containing the phone. You think I'm just going to roll over after everything Dad did to protect this? Thomas sighed, pulling a sleek handgun from his coat. I was hoping you'd see reason. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Before anyone could react, Marcus lunged forward, knocking Thomas's arm to the side. The gun went off, the deafening crack echoing through the warehouse. Elise dove behind a stack of crates, her heart pounding as the chaos unfolded. Run! Marcus shouted, grappling with Thomas for control of the weapon. Elise hesitated for a split second before grabbing the bag and bolting toward the back exit. Elise! Derek shouted after her, but she didn't look back. Her only thought was survival. As she burst into the alley, the morning sun momentarily blinded her. She didn't stop, didn't think, just ran. Behind her, she heard footsteps. Stop, Elise. Derek's voice called out, but she pushed herself harder, her legs burning with the effort. She darted into a side street, her mind racing. Marcus was still inside, fighting for his life. Derek and Thomas were after her, and somewhere out there, the people behind Project Eclipse were closing in. Elise slowed for a moment, her chest heaving. She had no allies left, no one to trust. All she had was the phone and the determination to finish what her father started. Elise ducked into a narrow alley, her chest heaving, the weight of the bag over her shoulder dragging her down. The adrenaline coursing through her veins drowned out the noise of the city waking around her. She clutched the strap tighter, the old phone inside now feeling more like a ticking bomb than a lifeline. Behind her, Derek's voice echoed faintly. "Elise, stop running. You don't know what you're doing." She didn't stop. She couldn't. Her mind raced through the events of the morning. Thomas's betrayal, Derek's double cross, Marcus fighting for his life. She had been naive to think her family would stand by her in this fight. Turning sharply, Elise found herself on a quiet side street lined with abandoned storefronts. She leaned against a wall, her breath coming in shallow gasps. Her hands trembled as she pulled out the phone and stared at it. This device had cost her father his life, and now it was tearing hers apart. What was so important that Thomas and Derek were willing to betray her to get it? Elise didn't have time to dwell. She needed help. But who could she trust now? Caroline Voss. Marcus had mentioned her, the investigative journalist who had taken down high-level corruption before. If anyone could handle the explosive truth on this phone, it was her. She pulled out her regular phone and quickly searched for Caroline's contact information. A public-facing email was the only thing she could find. No phone number, no address. "Elise, think," she muttered to herself. She tried to recall Marcus's words. "She operates in the shadows, hard to track but connected." Then it hit her, an old journalist trick. She opened her email and composed a short, cryptic message. Subject: looking for the truth. Message: you exposed the Blue Harbor files in 2020. I have something bigger, a story that could shake the foundation of this country. Contact me securely. She hit send, hoping Caroline would take the bait. Minutes felt like hours as Elise waited, crouched in the shadow of a doorway. Her heart leaped when her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown sender. "Meet me at 5th and Brambleton, the coffee shop. 1 hour. Don't bring anyone." The sudden response sent a chill down Elise's spine. It could be Caroline, or it could be another trap. She shoved the phone back into her pocket, her decision made. She didn't have much of a choice. 1 hour later, the coffee shop was a nondescript hole in the wall, its weathered awning flapping in the breeze. Elise scanned the area, her nerves on edge. She had tucked the phone deep in her bag, trying to appear as inconspicuous as possible. Inside, a woman sat alone at a corner table, her back to the wall. She was in her late 30s, dressed casually in jeans and a jacket, but her sharp eyes and the air of quiet confidence made her stand out. Elise approached cautiously. "Caroline Voss?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman looked up, her expression unreadable. "You're either very brave or very stupid showing up like this." "I didn't have much of a choice," Elise replied, sliding into the chair across from her. "Marcus said you could help." At the mention of Marcus, Caroline's expression hardened. "Marcus Foster. He's involved in this?" "Yes," Elise said. "He helped me decrypt some files my father left me. Files connected to something called Project Eclipse." Caroline's sharp eyes studied her, searching for any hint of deception. Finally, she leaned forward. "If what you're saying is true, you're in more danger than you realize." "I already know that," Elise said. "My stepfather just tried to kill me." Caroline's lips tightened. "They're escalating. We don't have much time. Tell me everything." As Elise recounted the events of the past few days, Caroline listened intently, her expression darkening with every detail. When Elise finished, the journalist sat back, her fingers steepled in thought. "Project Eclipse," Caroline said slowly. "I've heard whispers about it. A Black Ops initiative buried under layers of bureaucracy. The kind of thing that doesn't officially exist. If your father had evidence on it, that explains why they're so desperate to get to you. Do you think you can help?" Elise asked, her voice wavering. Caroline's eyes flicked to the bag. "Let me see the phone." Elise hesitated, her father's last words ringing in her ears. Trust no one. But Caroline was her only chance now. Slowly, she pulled out the phone and handed it over. Caroline examined it, her expression unreadable. I've seen phones like this before, she said. Customized hardware, untraceable, built for one purpose, to hide the truth. She glanced up. You said Marcus was decrypting files. Yes, Elise said, but we got interrupted before we could finish. There's more on there, financial records, names, and a hit list. Caroline's eyes widened. A hit list. Journalists, activists, even politicians, Elise said. And my name was on it. Caroline sat back, her face grim. This is bigger than I thought. Before Elise could respond, the bell above the coffee shop door jingled. She glanced up and froze. Derek stood in the doorway, his eyes locking onto hers with a mix of anger and desperation. Behind him, 2 men in suits entered, their cold gazes sweeping the room. Derek. Elise called out, her voice barely above a whisper. Don't make a scene. Caroline's expression hardened. Who is that? My half-brother, Elise whispered. And those men with him aren't here for coffee. Caroline's eyes darted to the back door. Follow me. No. Elise said, but Caroline was already slipping out the back. The narrow alley behind the coffee shop provided a brief moment of cover. Behind them, they heard shouts as Derek and the men realized they were gone. This way, Caroline said, leading Elise through a maze of alleyways. The journalist moved with practiced precision, her movements quick but calculated. Elise's heart pounded as she followed, the bag bouncing against her back. Where are we going? To a safe house, Caroline said. Someplace they won't find us. A car screeched to a halt at the end of the alley, cutting off their path. One of the suited men stepped out, his hand reaching into his jacket. Caroline cursed under her breath. Run. They darted down a side path, the men in pursuit. Elise's legs burned, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She clutched the bag tightly, her father's voice echoing in her mind. The phone, it's more than it seems. They finally lost their pursuers, ducking into an abandoned warehouse on the edge of the city. Caroline locked the door behind them, her breathing heavy but controlled. Elise collapsed onto the floor, clutching her knees. I can't keep doing this. You don't have a choice, Caroline said bluntly. But you're not alone anymore. Caroline opened the phone, her fingers deftly navigating the encrypted files Marcus had partially decrypted. As she worked, her expression shifted from focused to horrified. This isn't just about Project Eclipse, she said. Your father wasn't just collecting evidence. He was building a fail-safe. A fail-safe? Elise asked. Caroline turned the phone toward her, showing a new file that had just unlocked. The screen displayed a simple message written in her father's unmistakable handwriting. Elise, the truth will protect you. Follow the coordinates. Please like the video, subscribe if you have not, and turn on notifications so you don't miss part 2 dropping in 24 hours. Till then, I would like to see your feedbacks in the comment section. Comment the lessons you've learned or simply let me know where you are watching from.